So hello everyone, thank you for coming. Today I will be talking about the smart home I didn't ask for. So first, my name is Nils Amiet. I'm a security researcher working at Kudelski Security, and I focus on privacy, large data processing at scale, and I'm a huge Linux fan. And I would like to thank my colleagues, Nathan, Sylvain, John, Nicolas, Karim, Terry, and the others I may forget, for their useful feedback, ideas, and for helping me with this project. So what is this about? So it's basically my story with a smart home. And I will first talk about how I analyzed network traffic on that system. How I analyzed a tablet device that was in the apartment, the findings I discovered, and then how I disclosed those findings. So once upon a time, I was looking for a new apartment for rent, and I found one and decided to rent it. And the day I moved in, I found that this was on the wall by the entrance of the apartment. So it's a wall-mounted tablet that runs an app in kiosk mode, so there is no apparent way to escape the app. And you can use the buttons on that app to control a few assets inside of the apartment. So you can control the heating in the various rooms, turn and on and off the lights, control the window blinds, and also when someone rings from the outside at the main entrance door, there is an intercom, and you can see the people who ring there because there's a camera outside, and you can also open the main building entrance door through that tablet. And more apartments come pre-installed with such devices. And if you rent it, you just have to use it. I mean, it's there. The owner decided to install it. And actually, this creates a dependence on the device. And one example of that is, let's say you have a balcony and you have window blinds on the outside of the windows. And if the blinds are down, even if you open the windows, there's no way for you to go out to the balcony because the blinds are down. And the only way to raise those blinds is to use that tablet, that system. So if it doesn't work, if it gets compromised, whatever, you're basically locked out. And so that's why there's really a dependence on that device. So you can use the tablet directly, use the buttons, but it has another feature where you can actually press a button on that interface and say that you want to pair a smartphone to the tablet. And if you do that, the tablet is going to generate a 4-digit PIN code, which is valid for 60 seconds. And you can install the corresponding mobile app on your smartphone, open the app, and if you enter the right 4-digit code on the app within the 60 seconds, the smartphone gets paired to the tablet, and then you can use this phone to remotely control assets inside of the apartment from anywhere on the internet. So at that point, I really started to wonder what the security of the system was like. So this brings us to the first chapter, which is the analysis of the network traffic. What I've analyzed is the Android application, because this is what I had. I had an Android phone at hand, and it was a Pixel 4 smartphone running Android 11. And I just tried to capture the traffic at first, and I saw that most of the traffic was actually encrypted. So we could maybe do a man-in-the-middle attack if there's no other special protections, and try to see the clear text traffic there. So what I did is I rooted the phone with Magisk and installed some custom certificates on the device. And since Android 7, the OS won't trust the user certificates by default. So these has to be system-wide certificates, and you need some privileges to do that. But if you have a rooted phone with Magisk, there's a module that you can directly install from inside the Magisk app called Move Certificates, which does this for you. So you first install the certificates as user certs, and then you can move them. It will move them system-wide so that your application trusts these certificates. So having a look at the traffic, we quickly see that the meat of the traffic is actually XMPP traffic, which is a chat protocol. But there is also some HTTP traffic and HTTPS actually traffic there. So to intercept the HTTP traffic, I used something called Meetum proxy, but we could have used Burp Suite or any other HTTP proxy there. And for XMPP, so at first the traffic was unencrypted, but quickly after the initial connection is done, start TLS message is sent, and the rest of the communications are encrypted. So that means we have XMPPS, so XMPP over TLS traffic. And most HTTPS proxies only intercept HTTP, and they won't do XMPP interception. So I had to use something else here. And one tool that worked for me is called XMPP Meetum, and this is what I used. So here we have a screenshot of Wireshark, and we see an XMPP packet which was inside of a TLS encrypted session, and we see the clear text traffic. And here it's just a packet that invites the smartphone to an XMPP room. We will see later what that is. So to set that up, what I did is I set up a Wi-Fi access point on my laptop and used the smartphone to connect to that software IP. And it created a new network interface on my laptop where I captured the traffic from the laptop. And for HTTPS, so I used Meetum proxy, and you just need to instruct it to dump the TLS handshakes to an SSL key log file. And then this file can be loaded from Wireshark to, so that Wireshark actually decrypts the traffic for you. So you can see the clear text traffic inside of Wireshark the easy way. For the XMPP proxy, it's basically the same thing, except for me, the certificate I had did not work at first because apparently the smartphone app checks that the domain name for which this certificate is valid equals xmpp.mysmart.net. So I had to generate another certificate with that, that was valid for that domain name in particular, and redo the thing where I pushed the certificate on the device and used the Move Certificates module to trust it. And then we just run XMPP Meetum, same thing, it logs the handshake to an SSL key log file, and we can also load that within Wireshark to see the clear text traffic. And lastly, we need a bit of IP tables commands to just redirect the traffic so that it all works together. So we were able to see the clear text traffic, which means there is no certificate pinning on the mobile application. And inside of the XMPP messages, we've seen that there are JSON payloads that were sent. And here there is an example of one of these. So this is a payload that was sent when I used the smartphone application to turn on a light in the apartment, and we see that in the body section it says on, and turn on asset 13, which was a light. So next thing I wondered is the source code of the app obfuscated? So I just got the APK file and tried to unpack it, and it was actually obfuscated. So that gave us very limited understanding of what the app was doing. So we could have spent some time to reverse engineer it, but this would have taken a long time. And as one famous security researcher says, if it's smart, it's vulnerable. So I decided to move on. So that brings us to the second chapter, which is the analysis of the tablet itself. So the goal here was to figure out how does the tablet work. And first question I asked myself is there a way we can connect to this tablet? So on the front of the tablet, on the right side, there's actually a plate that sticks because there's just magnets below it, so you can just remove that. And below that, it reveals that there is a micro USB cable that gets plugged into the tablet. So if you use a cable that fits in the plastic, because I didn't want to destroy the whole thing since I'm not the owner of the apartment, you can actually have a cable between your laptop and the tablet. So maybe that's a start, and maybe you can do something over USB. And also, if you unmount the tablet from the wall, you see that behind it there is a hole in the wall, and inside that wall there is actually a chip with two cables that go into the tablet, and another one which is an Ethernet cable and this is where the tablet gets its internet access from. So I tried to see if maybe we could do something over USB. And actually, USB debugging was enabled by default, so you can just use ADB and get a shell on the tablet. And to my surprise, when I got that shell, I had, that special character that means that you are root on the tablet. So it looks like the tablet was actually delivered as rooted by default. And it also runs Android 4.4, Android KitKat, which was released in 2013. So next thing I tried to do is try to enumerate the applications that were installed on the tablet and collect the APK files for these applications. So with these commands, you can see the list of applications installed, see where these APK files are installed on the tablet, and download the APK files from the tablet to the laptop over USB. And doing that, I found a few interesting targets. Mainly, there were 4 applications installed on the tablet that had eSmart in their name. And there was a tablet app, a manager app, an OTA app, and a launcher app. And another thing that looked interesting, there was an application called QuickSSHD, which looked like an SSH server that was installed on the tablet. So what I did next is I used JADX to unpack and decompile the APK files. So that's a free tool. That's what I used. That's what worked for me. It was good enough. Sometimes it could not decompile all of the code, but it was good enough to see what happened. And we could have used something else, like maybe convert the APK file to a jar file and then use a more traditional decompiler, maybe the one that's included in IntelliJ IDE or something like that, or use commercial products, but for me JADX worked. So looking at the source code that was unpacked and decompiled, it was actually not obfuscated. So it was easy to understand what happened and what these apps were doing. So here there's a screenshot of one of so that was in the tablet app actually, and it's one part of the code where actually we have the URL that we have to send a request to open the main entrance door of the building. So we can see the code like that. It's not obfuscated. Another thing that was mentioned in the code is that there was multiple different hardwares for the tablet. So it looks like the vendor has different versions of the tablet. And the one I had was called RK3188. Looks like it's a rock chip, RK3188. But the code mentioned at least 3 other models, C91, C93, and Finch. But I haven't looked into that. Next, I copied all the files that were in these locations on the tablet, so data, and the SD card directories. And there was, in data, under the folder for the tablet app, there was one file that contained the IP address of the building's main entrance door. So for me, it was 10.0.500. And looking at the code that we had previously in the screenshot, we quickly understand that the URL that you have, on which you have to make an HTTP GET request to open the door is the one on that slide. So what I did is so first, I had to be connected on my on the local network where the tablet was. So what I did is I had my laptop plugged into the tablet so that I could send the request on that internal network, and I had an SSH server running on the laptop. And from the outside of the building, I used my smartphone to SSH into my laptop. And I just used it to send the HTTP request because it was easier to have a smartphone in the hand rather than a laptop. So we just sent the HTTP request there. And that's it. You enter the building. So, in my specific case, the way it was deployed was the following. So, there are 6 buildings in that neighborhood, and each building has 8 apartments, and there is 1 tablet in each apartment. And each of these tablets are connected to a switch in that building, and there is 1 building entrance door for the building, and each apartment also has a door apartment, but these doors are not connected, thankfully. You still need a physical key to open those doors. And then the switches are all interconnected, so all the 6 buildings are connected to the same network. So, what I tried to do next is try to see what these IP addresses were, and it looked like that actually there was a logic in the way that the IP addresses were assigned to the tablets and the doors. So all the doors end with 100, and for example, if you are inside building B, apartment 5, the IP was 10.0.2.5. So basically, you can know exactly which device you target because it's the IP addresses are logically assigned. And I tried to ping other tablets in my building, and that worked. And then I tried to see if it was possible to ping tablets and doors from other buildings in the neighborhood, and that also worked. So looks like you could potentially open the door of other buildings in the neighborhood. But for legal reasons, I did not try this. But when I reported it to the vendor, they did not deny. So looks like that would be possible. So that brings us to the 3rd chapter, findings. So putting all of that together, this is what I think the whole system, how the whole system works, after reading the source code, having a look at the traffic and everything I've learned so far. So it looks like we have, on the smartphone, we have the eSmart Live app, which runs. And on the tablet, we have multiple apps. We have the tablet app, and we also have the manager app and the other apps as well, but these are the most important ones. And we also have an SSH server that runs on the tablet. And the tablet, when it boots, it's going to connect to an XMPP server, which is hosted somewhere in the cloud. And it joins a public room on that XMPP server. And same thing with the smartphone app. It's going also to connect to the XMPP server and join that same public room. So basically all devices join that public room. And when you pair a smartphone with the tablet is going to create a private room, join that private room, and invite the smartphone inside of that private room. And once you are inside of that private room, these JSON payloads are sent through XMPP messages, and the tablet is going to interpret these payloads and do actions inside of the apartment. So this is how you send commands and say, I want to turn on a light, I want to change the heating, and so on. The tablet is going to execute that for you. There was another component called the web platform, and apparently this is a web server that runs also somewhere in the cloud. And the manager app on the tablet is going to periodically check if there are any commands sent by the web platform that should be executed. And we will talk about that next as well. And there's also another component that was referenced in the code, which is a tunnel server. And one of the commands that can be sent by the web platform to the tablet is to instruct the tablet to do a reverse port forwarding through SSH on that tunnel server, so that a port is open from the outside, and then an employee working for the vendor can connect to the tunnel server because they have access to that. And since the port is open on the tablet, they can use that tunnel server to connect back into the tablet and use that for remote troubleshooting of issues someone may have at home. So I mentioned both tablet and smartphones connect to the XMPP server, and on that XMPP server, there's username and password authentication. The username is a Jabber ID or JID that's part of the XMPP protocol, and that value is derived from the device's MAC address concatenated to some random value, and the password is a hash of that JID plus another random value. And by default, when it's the first time that the tablet boots up, it's going to try to connect to that XMPP server, and if it fails, it's going to generate these random credentials and register on the XMPP server. So it looks like registration is actually open, so you could register on that XMPP server and potentially enumerate the devices that are connected on the public room, for example. Another thing I noticed is that these private rooms that the tablet and smartphone use for interpreting the commands, the names of the private rooms are actually the JID of the tablet concatenated to some hard-coded value at conference.mysmart.net. And I mentioned the rest already. So potentially we could connect to this public room, maybe enumerate the name of the devices that are connected, and maybe there could be a way that we could guess the name of the private rooms. So I wondered, could we actually try to connect to one of these, join one of these private rooms if we knew its name. And when I reported that to the vendor, they said that someone had already reported that problem, and it had already been patched early last year. So this was an actual issue in the past, but now the rooms are really invite only, and even if you guess the name, you cannot join unless you are invited. So I mentioned that web platform. So when you go to webplatform.mysmart.net, there's a login form, and I did not try to really analyze that platform, but it looks like this is a platform that is used by real estate agencies that own the buildings, for example, to send messages to all the tablets within a neighborhood, maybe to notify the people about some event that happens or some problems in the neighborhood. And this can also be used probably by the vendor to collect some information about the tablets. Also, we talked about this SSH tunnel server. So I mentioned that the vendor can use this to remotely troubleshoot issues if the port is opened through that web platform command. And I checked how does that quick SSH server actually worked and how authentication worked. And it uses password authentication, and the password was actually stored as its MD5 hash inside of a file on the tablet. So when someone tries to log in, the password is going to be hashed, and that hash is going to be checked against the hash stored in that file. And I tried to brute force that hash, but I could not brute force it. Apparently it's too long. But there is another way we could actually go around this. So, since we actually have physical access to the tablet, and we have USB debugging enabled on the tablet, we are root on the tablet. That means we control the SSH server. So we could replace the SSH server and modify it so that whenever there is a login attempt, the username and password that is used is dumped to a file. So then you could pick up the phone, call the vendor and say, "Hello, I have a problem with my tablet at home. Could you please remotely troubleshoot it?" And they would send the command to open the port, have someone try to log in. The credentials would be stored in that file, so you would just collect the password from that log file. And where this gets critical is because actually all the tablets in the same neighborhood share the same password for that SSH server. And since they are all connected to the same network, if you were to get that password using that social engineering attack, you could actually connect to the other tablets in the neighborhood over SSH, since they all have the SSH server running. And since you are root on these tablets, it's basically game over, because you could control everything in the apartment from there. And also these tablets, they have a microphone and a camera, so you could potentially spy on neighbors, or neighbors could have been spying on me, maybe. So this is a real privacy issue. So the way we could remediate that problem is actually quite simple. So instead of using passwords for SSH authentication, we could use public and private keys instead. So even if the private key is used for authentication, there would be no way to actually obtain it by dumping it on the server side. And the other thing that we could do to fix it is there is actually no need for this SSH server to run at all times on these tablets. So we could just shut it down and only start the server when it's needed, like when the person sends the command through the web platform. Just a few other findings. So it's actually the owner of the building who pays for the internet access that is used by the tablet. So if we have root access on the tablet, we could set up a Wi-Fi hotspot on the tablet and use that connection for free, basically, so no need to pay for internet anymore. And the other thing is that these 4-digit PIN codes, basically, when you start pairing, the tablet is going to listen on the XMPP public room for messages containing these 4-digit PIN codes. And if such a message comes in, it checks if the PIN code is the right one that it expects. And if it is the right one, then it accepts the pairing, basically. So you could send all the possible combinations and just spam PIN code messages. There's just 4 digits. And you could just wait until someone tries to pair a smartphone and hope that you do it first, and you would get paired to a random tablet at someone's house. So it would probably work, but you would also probably get detected pretty quickly because you would be spamming these messages. So that brings us to the last chapter, disclosure. So first, just a quick summary. So these are the findings that I have reported to the vendor. So USB debugging was enabled by default. The tablet is rooted. We can open the building main entrance door if we are on the same network. The tablet runs Android 4.4, which does not get security patches anymore. The tablet apps are not obfuscated. There is no certificate pinning on the Android smartphone app because we were able to see the clear text traffic. And the SSH server is always running, and there's password authentication, so we could do that social engineering attack to retrieve the password. And there's no rate limiting for PIN codes when you do pairing. So in December last year, I disclosed these issues to the vendor by email. The next week, they acknowledged receipt, and the day after that, I received a response from them. And it looks like there may have been some misunderstanding of the impacts of the findings I reported. So I offered them to discuss and clarify these findings in person. And it was almost the holidays, so we actually did that after the holidays. And finally, we met in mid-February, and we discussed these. I explained the impacts, and we agreed that they would work on a fix for, and at first for the most critical things that I had reported. And in May, I contacted them again and told them that I was about to talk about this publicly and wanted to get an update if they had the time to fix these issues. And I got a response saying that the fix was in progress and that it would be deployed if the tests were successful by the end of the month. And in July, I was able to confirm that USB debugging has been disabled on the tablet, and the SSH server was completely uninstalled from the tablet. So in my book, this fixes the most critical issues, and they have done their job and fixed the most critical problems here. And in October this year, they also rolled out a new GUI to all the tablets. So now it looks a bit different. It looks like this. So it looks like they're still working on it. So in conclusion, the vendor fixed the most critical issues. These smart devices are deeply integrated into homes, and we should think about security from the start when we work with such devices. And there could be like real issues like the not being able to go out on the balcony because you cannot use anything else than the tablet. So this is really like critical systems. And if you want more cool research, just put a smart device in a security researcher's home. So thank you. And do you have any questions?
Hello. Thanks for the talk. It was really interesting. One question about the recommendation of pinning a certificate. Wouldn't that have just slow you down if the certificate had been pinned? And is it really a good security practice to pin certificates on the app for this?
Yeah, so certificate pinning can be considered like security theater. So it's not something that's going to prevent an attacker from actually getting into the system. However, it's going to try to make it much more difficult for an attacker to actually get some results. So this has an effect where you may, the attacker may think this is too much effort to get some results. So this is where it would be effective.
Thank you.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for the talk. With regards to your research, you mentioned that you connected your computer to the network where the tablet was, and you then SSH in it with your phone to send a command to open the doors. And you mentioned that every door could be open in every building as long as you were on the same ring network per neighborhood. None of the remediation you mentioned about could prevent that, because it looks like there was no kind of network security to prevent someone just plugging his computer on the network and just spamming all IP addresses with that URL and hoping to get it through.
Yeah, that's correct. So that is one issue that I have not checked again if that has been fixed, but we would have to get an update from the vendor, but I did not get any update from them about this. So right now it's unclear whether this one has been patched or not. Yeah.
But so it does confirm also that there's no whatsoever network security in place to prevent you to like nmap scanning, brute forcing, all kind of things you could imagine on an open cable.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, very bad smart house. I'll go for cabling stuff. Thank you.
Hi, Nils. Did you measure the speed of your free internet access?
That's a good question. I did not measure it but when I talked to the vendor, they said that it was a pretty slow connection. I'm not sure exactly the numbers, but it may have been like 10 megabits per second, something like this. So you could still stream from Netflix using it, I guess.
Indeed.
The screenshot of the updated UI you shortly flashed has also temperature controls in it. Have you looked how the tablet connects to the heating?
Sorry, I didn't get what was the last part of the question.
Did you check how the tablet communicates with the heating and cooling system of the house?
Yes, that's a good question. I have not checked exactly how it works behind the tablet. So there was this chip behind the tablet. But it apparently, from the documentation I found on the vendor's website, they put basically a chip behind all of the different assets that you can control. So, for example, for the lights, behind the switches, there's also one of these chips behind each switch for the lights. But specifically for the heating or how that works, I haven't looked into it.
Okay, let's thank the speaker again. Thank you, Nils.